Beautiful. Must have had a pre-spring meeting.
Okay, let's try to fix the lighting. Not gonna find it. Update on, the main topics we're talking about, the vacancy ordinance, sprinkler, planning commission coordination, and then state matters. We'll talk about the development rights, which Tim and Sandy will talk about. We'll talk about the housing trust fund. There's Sean and Dan will talk about if time will review the CHIP program. And then we're going to move into developer feedback, which I'm hoping we have some folks attending for that.
Otherwise, we get to go home early.
But I mean, we'll wait a while though before we go home because we'll have to just, I'll just have to filibuster to give a little bit, in case someone's coming late, give a little bit of give there. Okay, can I have someone, how do people feel about the minute? Any questions, comments about the minute? Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, how are we on sound? Can they hear us on there yet? Okay, great. So is the Dan online?
It's
That's me.
Stan.
Oh, this is you, Dan.
That's me.
Okay, great, perfect. I appreciate that. Not.
No, here's,
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm gonna open it up for public comment.
here's our public.
Yeah.
Sean online. Anything in the room? Any public comment? Going once? Going twice? Gone. Okay. Matt.
Hi.
Hi. Give us the overview, the city update on projects, please. What's that?
Sure. So just on housing,
Just on how.
not on
Yeah.
everything we can do. So
Yeah.
obviously, for the city, the big excitement is all about Country Club Road.
Mhm.
Process of interviewing the 4 teams wrapped up last week, and Thursday morning there will be public deliberation among the members of the subcommittee, which include Sal, Ben, and Ethan. And that'll be scheduled for an hour and a half, and that's just a first conversation. It's not a decision making conversation. Oh, no, hold on, I can tell you just one thing. Starts at 8 and it's scheduled to go till 9:30. And the link is online. There is a discussion at tomorrow night's council meeting that Mike will lead, that I've been kind of doing in the background, which is the tax stabilization discussion and trying to merge the work that the policy that was approved by the city in March, merge that with the 2020 tax stabilization policy and clean up what are some really sticky problems with the current policy to kind of streamline and make it much more straightforward. For example, the current policy includes an item where if you hire 20 people, you get an extra year, but we can't count whether they hire 20 people or more, so we're just going to eliminate that out of the policy. That's what I'm saying. And then there is also a greater range now, and so we're going to try to the staff will try to structure the tax stabilization policy so that depending on your investment or the return on the investment for the brand list, then the amount and duration of the tax stabilization that you're given will extend.
Okay.
Things like that. It'll be explicitly put into the policy, needs to be explicitly put in the policy that CHIP projects cannot be eligible for tax stabilization because those contradict one another. You pay for the CHIP project with tax dollars, and if you get rid of the tax dollars because you're giving somebody stabilization, you can't pay for the printing tax. So there's just some policy kind of gears that need to be synchronized, and we need approval from the city council tomorrow night to work on the policy and come back to city council. So
Okay.
that's what we'll.
Just one second.
Yeah.
Are you okay taking notes? Okay. You can stop paying. That's fine.
I'll send my.
Yes,
The first 5 minutes.
unless you could have said no. But that's okay, we appreciate it, and you got a groove on, you got a groove with your notes, so,
That's your.
yeah, she's. Dan Mueller's on notes, okay, Matt.
I've been talking to a number of property owners, in the city who have property that can be developed, and some of it very large pieces of property, and I'm cautiously optimistic that those conversations will continue and perhaps lead to good results. As you all know, I'm not from Vermont, as I'm reminded daily. And
Wait 50 years.
yeah. Yeah. Somewhat. But one of the things that I'm trying to do now in my job is embed myself in people who have longstanding grudges against the city for whatever reason, so that I can understand what those problems are and try to bring them back into the conversation.
The Lord's work.
That takes an astounding amount of,
Yeah, a lot of listening, I bet,
a lot of sitting and
yeah, thank
all of
you.
which I'm happy to do. Again, kind of cautiously optimistic, but we'll see. There is a conversation in the homelessness committee about establishing a new camping policy, which I think is relevant to what we talk about in the long term, because trying to figure out better ways of having people not be living in places where we don't want them for community amenities is an important idea, but we have to have a policy. And the police chief's very angry with me. He came and visited me all geared up in his SWAT stuff to tell me that he likes the camping policy. Stop talking about it, but I'm still talking about it. We'll see. I had a meeting, just tangentially, I had a meeting with a guy who works at National Life who wants to build a climbing gym, which is cool. But in the conversation, he said that I should go back to National Life to talk to them about all of the property they own, because when I talked to the director of human resources in the fall, he was like, we make jobs, we don't make houses. Very like, no way are we talking about housing. But I've been encouraged to go back to National Life and talk to them about, because they own 250 acres. They own an astoundingly large amount of property that could be at least in part developed. So I'm going back to National Life. I had a wonderful conversation with Barbara Gonry about ADUs. She wants to put ADUs on top of all the garages, and she's working with the prefabricated housing developer to figure out a way of using helical piers on the outside corners of garages to then put prefabricated ADUs on the top of them, which is an interesting idea. There's a job of this, but it's an interesting idea.
Residential garages? The New York Times had a feature on that. Pre-approved ADUs,
Yeah, well,
which included ADUs on top of
Yeah.
it.
Pre-approved isn't going to happen.
I know.
The idea is nice. I had a very good conversation with the Greenway Institute, who are very concerned as they expand about developing workforce housing. So that's a continuing conversation about the property they own on College Hill. I pitched to them the idea that the lawn in front of the building could be turned into a quad a la Oxford, but they didn't think that would fly in the community. I think this was another one of those you're not from moments that I had. But I think you could do a really beautiful quad in this, but no. Tim and Jesse and I met yesterday briefly and had really great conversations. I have an idea. We need to relocate. One of the high priorities in the city plan is relocating the firehouse, and talk to the fire chief, and he likes the site that is what's the address? 139. Jesse Jacobs. Chuck Jacobs owns what used to be a funeral parlor on Main Street.
Right.
And the fire chief thinks that would be an appropriate site because it's almost out of the floodplain. You can raise it up. But what I really like about the site is that it's 300 feet deep, and I did drawings and talked to the fire chief and made sure all the equipment fits. But we could build maybe like 40 units of housing on the back half, and then use the tax increment from the housing construction to pay for the construction of the firehouse. So that's an interesting idea that is in its early stages, but then talking to Tim, there are other adjacent sites that might be also eligible for redevelopment for housing in downtown, which would be really terrific. Um, I'll stop.
You'll stop.
Yeah.
This is great. Updates. Thank you for that. Questions for Matt? Okay. Well, we're now moving into,
I just want to
Yeah.
applaud you for keeping the fire station right downtown. There, it's subject of it moving has been brought up several times over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting.
yeah.
And I think that the potential of redeveloping the existing fire station is also very exciting to me, like just putting something right downtown would be really fun. But these are early days in that conversation, so we'll see. There are some grants that we might be able to use, federal money that we might be able to use to set the groundwork, and then using the tax to pay for the station. Again, all preliminary, but it's exciting as an idea that we could have on Main Street another 40 units of housing. It's, I think, gets me to work every day.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. Yep. We'll move into other updates. Vacancy ordinance. One of the two people on the committee here, or Ben, do you want to give an update?
Yeah, go on. I mean, I think the short update is, I think, is still in flux. We've had a number of meetings. Two of us, right? Ben, Matt's been in on those to try and take feedback, taking a few twists and turn. I think a lot of the comparisons for Burlington and other bigger cities that have done vacancy fee were often based off sort of the nuisance approach, and it looks like it'd be a little bit different take in Montpelier. So I think we're looking to see maybe with St. Johnsbury or some other examples, there may be some that are more relevant to the approach that we would have. The group the subcommittee was also looking to see if there could be any data. There's a kind of hard data, but what data could be measured to see what an economic impact could be. Anything from from schools, money that comes in when you have average students, impact on residents shopping in downtowns and in commercial areas, a few other areas on that. But I think the group still needs to convene again. So I think was currently looking to set up another meeting this week or next. To see where we are.
There is a draft that is close to being able to be workshopped, so we're incrementally getting somewhere, but yeah, not a really robust update at this point.
Yeah, I saw that Rebecca sent around a draft to weigh in on. So it seems like there might be something to review by our next meeting.
Yeah,
if not before.
That's a goal. Yeah.
Did that draft get commented on by the attorney?
No.
Okay, so we got the feedback from the attorney. Draft this stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
She's just at the beginning of this meeting sent a deadline for us to edit it by Wednesday.
Tomorrow or next week?
No, this week.
Okay, all right, get on that. Thank you.
Can't run over tonight. We got to get
I promise. Okay, so tax stabilization, thank you for that. It's really interesting. I know we've had a lot of twisted turns with that work because of what we heard from the lawyer, and then the comparison of Burlington being off, and then trying to figure out exactly how to be spent.
Yeah, I was just St. Johnsbury and I have 3 times now had and canceled meetings. I'm gonna try to get up there.
Okay. Or just maybe just do a phone call at this point, because you got only till tomorrow.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I think do the phone call and then follow up, because St. John's Area would be great for you to visit.
Yep.
They've done so much awesome,
Right.
like revitalization
Right.
work, but
And you get a badge, a Vermont badge.
If you need to. I'm not gonna cover tax stabilization because we already had an update on tax stabilization earlier, and it'll be covered again by city council tomorrow. The spring, so tomorrow night, Tim and I will be in front of city council, giving them an update on our work here. I'm going to share with them the priorities document that we had put together, and they have this, it's attached to the agenda. I think folks have seen this because I've sent it around to you, but if you haven't, feel free to take one if you need it, or just like for the members of the public if you need it. Member public. So I'll plan to walk them through this and then we'll take their questions. I brought this up now because sprinklers came up at the last city council meeting, and that's the update that I'm giving, but I just wanted to let you know the framing, because that will also be on the agenda tomorrow night. I did share this committee's position on the sprinklers. The council heard from many people and then voted, I think it was 5-1 or?
Yep.
Yeah, 5-1 to see language that would shift toward the state standards from the Montpelier local standards to the state standards. So in line with the recommendation that we made, I will stay for that section tomorrow. I may say the same exact thing that I said in the first hearing at the second hearing, just for consistency and because then they're going to vote on it. But that will be, a conversation tomorrow. Obviously, Mike Miller with the planning director spoke, the fire chief spoke, James Moore spoke. There were different developers that weighed in. Dave Leginus weighed in with public comment. So there was a lot of dialogue about it, and other members of the public spoke too. Questions on sprinklers?
I just briefly looked at the city council meeting on Orca after the fact, and I didn't see much discussion of the incentive to put in sprinklers nonetheless. And I wondered if I missed that, or if I didn't miss that it didn't happen, if it could be brought up again, because that was part of our discussion.
Yeah, I mentioned that in my testimony, and it was in writing before them. And they did have an incentive they were considering, which was different than the incentive we put forward. It was, if I remember right, $2,500 off your taxes annually. Is that right, Matt? Okay, we can find that out, but it was on the council. It was in their council packet, but they are considering some incentive. Yeah. And I can, I'm going to make sure that that gets raised again. That actually will incentivize me to speak one more time. So thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. They also, I just want to note that I had spoke to Mayor Gwynn like a week and a half ago or so about the work that Tim and Sandy are doing around looking at the development regs and different approaches to that, and shared with him the conversations we've been having with the Planning Commission, which we'll have again later on this week, because as you know, they're going chapter by chapter considering, and they are open to much more broad changes. And so they're eager to hear from us on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. I can't remember, but the chairs on what we have spoken about. And so we have at least the mayor, and we'll hear more from city council tomorrow night. There's their enthusiasm level for that kind of approach, but we know the planning commission is enthusiastic and the mayor's enthusiastic. We have had Carrie and Ben on this committee who have been enthusiastic. So I do think that you'll talk more in just a moment, Tim and Sandy, but I do think there's enough momentum to continue the work there. Okay, so the planning commission coordination, I think I've just covered that. Lauren, would you talk about the appeals process and the state process, like whatever is going on at the state level related to housing, we should be aware of? Or no?
I mean, related to appeals, there hasn't been any change from, just essentially studied language to look at, to address municipal appeal, so I think that issue, the plan seems to be come back next year with the recommendation, so I do think still weighing in with some of the conversation we had before, that process feedback can help shape a good policy for next year. There's a lot of housing policy pieces that I'm not following, so other people might know. Other, like, other pieces that was the one piece that I was kind of following.
Sandy, are you following something else?
Yeah, I've been a little distracted because I've been working on Country Club, but one thing that's really hit the state house this year is discussion about the tiers and the road rules. Road rules don't really affect Montpelier as much as other towns, but
Yeah, I don't think a lot.
but the tiers issue, I just want to point out because I'm speaking in general, not specifically about Country Club, but the tier 1A versus 1B is a really big issue. For instance, if Montpelier does not go for tier 1A, Country Club may not be both. Because we may have to go through it. The project, whoever's first, we may have to go through Act 250. And it just opens a huge door for appeal. So my sense is that bill, I don't know if it's going to go forward this year or not, the revisions, but everyone's kind of holding their breath. And unfortunately, it's an immediate issue. So I don't know if the city has a lobbyist to try to get down to the bottom of this. But I can tell you the very real outcome if Montpelier doesn't end up going to tier 1 in this plan, it will have an impact on development. Tier 1B limits non-residential development and in a housing project, and it also caps the
Matt, do we have any reason to believe the Montpelier won't go for tier 1? No.
Okay.
And
It heard directly to office.
so Sandy, is that separate from the large issues around tier 2 and tier 3? Or is
It's
the whole
all
thing,
tangled in
so the
together.
whole thing is tangled in?
Yeah,
Okay,
and that's great news here, because we had actually heard it directly off. The tier 1A requires full effective.
I'd heard that there was concern about whether or not the city would be applying for tier 1, and the quick answer is absolutely.
Right.
And I went and talked to Christian and confirmed that with him. So that should not be the problem.
Okay.
You've seen the land use maps that Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission is planning on putting forward the word.
No, I don't think anybody has. Mike's on board.
Most of them have submitted a scrap.
I think, yeah, I think what, I mean,
we can ask Christian tomorrow.
we can ask Christian tomorrow. I think that's what Christian's been working on, and one of the reasons the housing final report was delayed was because they were also working on the maps at the same time. But I'm just kind of speculating between lots of stuff that was said.
Okay.
I did forget one thing. We did get a $5 million grant from the state for the Country Club Road reconstruction.
is that all the way through? Because I heard it was one more hurdle that the
Well,
secretary
we have
didn't sign off.
to negotiate with them about what the terms of
The secretary.
Right.
That's
Pro forma.
fun, right?
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's great. Congratulations.
It's only a little
That's
thing.
really big news.
might be useful.
Yeah, I think that probably would be so. Okay.
And the road and like the original design from the engineering to build all of that. So raising Route 2 and smoothing out the road as it goes over the railroad tracks, and including the water and sewer and the sidewalk and the bike lane and lighting. And that's in addition to roughly $2.5 million and $3 million from Northern Borders, which a different grant which we've already got, which is money sitting. Just
Great.
waiting to be implemented.
Okay. Thank you. That's great news. Anything else at the state level for updates?
One thing, somebody sent me an article today, and I'd be interested in everyone might know something. about it, but somebody sent me an article that state was given permission to use Medicare money,
Medicaid money, yeah.
Medicaid money for housing. We're not doing it.
Just heard the story.
Yep, it's just, it broke late this afternoon on the ticker.
Which is,
The argument is that there are a couple of states that have done it successfully. One of the Carolinas, somebody else, but it was a ruling in the last days of the Biden administration. And the Trump administration is not allowing stuff to go forward. And the people here are worried that the state will lose more Medicaid funding if they push against the recalcitrance on the part of the Trump administration.
Hmm.
That's the rationale.
Well, something worth watching. Thank you for flagging that.
so it's for housing for people with
Medical
permanent
needs,
disabilities,
with medical needs.
Okay.
which, you know, yeah.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Development regulation. Moving on to Tim and Sandy.
Have a lot to say tonight. I mean, obviously, it's been really hard in the country club road piece. And I've been trying to read through zoning codes from other communities that seem to have housing happening, trying to figure out why, what the differences are maybe in their code versus ours. And it's fascinating how different codes are, what they focus on. They do vary greatly in the maps of the codes, and also in terms of the way, at least they work for me, where I can read them and it kind of guides me through, okay, I want to do this and you can follow it. I don't get that same warm fuzzy feeling with our code. But so it's yeah, that's kind of what we're trying to do, is analyze what's out there, get a sense of what other places are doing, and maybe talk to some folks and see if it helps.
So can I ask, what have you picked any communities or what communities you?
I mean, the initial group I've done is Middlebury. I tried Morrisville, St. Albans, of course, because they've been doing a lot. Brattleboro, St. John Ferry, Winooski. They're the ones that Winooski is actually, it's rough. I mean, it's probably worse than ours. Well, it's a bigger town. There's a lot of layers. They've added form-based in.
That's what I was.
But they still also seem to have like the old-fashioned code with form-based slapped on it. Which I think that's the mistake. I think if we just keep tweaking and slapping layers on, we have this qualm. And I think that's what they did. It's really.
I think that's in general a problem with codes, including the sprinkler, is to keep adding on restrictions and definitions rather than just overhauling.
Replacing.
Yeah,
Yes.
I actually really like Hardwick's code, and Plainfield's been really working hard on theirs. They're a smaller community, but I like their reticence to control a lot of things. It's from to just clean development. What I mean is that form-based, I've worked a little bit with it up in Burlington, and it can be cumbersome. So not having any restrictions at all in private housing. So
And so let me understand this. So you have seen, you're pulling from different communities here, and you're seeing some form-based use, and then just some completely just a written code that is approached differently. Some of the language is more user-friendly. So interesting. Are you getting a sense of like themes or opinions starting to form as you look through the data, where you're saying, you know, hey, if you were gonna just throw everything out and start from scratch, like where would you go with it? Are you getting close to that or not quite there? Or?
Yeah, actually, because they're not all 7 pages, but I think Marshall was 70, so they vary. But most of the major towns are more our size. But they all have a 15-page section of this definition. Okay,
Okay.
You know, so you can kind of make it work. You know, it's really fascinating to see how the zoning is a reflection of values of the community. And, you know, like St. Albans is a good thing to say, but it's amazing how many times they refer to adult entertainment. Which I don't think that's it. I think Morrisville also had a second. Wood. So it's kind of like, how do we format for Montpelier? Every community in the group though, because towns are built on rivers, has the flood issue. And where we have a, 68 or 70 something page addition to our zoning code for properties in designated flood areas, most of these communities are dealing with it in a section within their zoning code. It's already shorter than ours. They're just cleaning it up, making it a little simpler. But I really think the key for this to be constructive is to find a way to have the code help guide anybody who wants to do a project, and help you through it. So as an intelligent person, you can read it and say, okay, this is what I got to do. And we're pretty far from that right now.
Do any of them have an online interface that allows you to look something up that also has flag C also, for somebody looking for something, could start with one topic and figure out what they need to, you know what I mean? Like an index, but a smart index.
The volume what I'm trying to read it.
Right, that's what I would do too, but I would think somebody coming in, especially people younger than you and I.
There's a whole bunch of zoning requirements that are related to state programs. For instance, the complete streets. And as the state is trying to reduce their review, they're shifting it to towns and requiring towns to have it in their codes. And then one really big difference is the whole PUD section. Montpelier's is really huge. I think we have 5 different types of PUDs. So that could really use some.
Sandy, what's a PUD?
Planned unit development. So the way as Tim said, one major section is definitions, and then another major section is administration of the code. And then there's zoning rules, which are how you use the actual piece of land. And then there's subdivision rules, and then there's unit development. So there's 3 major rule sections. And Montpelier just gets down to very specific things, which when I was working in Country Club was actually kind of useful for the cottage clusters. But it's weird how when you get very specific, you restrict everything else. So you can't, it's very, very specific. And I think it's important to consider, it's kind of like back what people were trying to consider in the 70s, which is why restrict people's ability to develop at all? You don't want people to put a pig farm in the middle of Montpelier. It's understood. No pig farms, right where their neighbors right nearby. But other than that, it's a really good question. In Plainfield, for instance, there's not a lot of restriction about what buildings look like, what their sizes, and how they're ornamented. They have something design review district. So it's a kind of theoretical discussion, like how restrictive. One thing that we brought up, I've been working at these players a little bit, and one thing we brought up is, could there be an overlay district for primary? And if there were an overlay district, could it just say built here, and really not a lot of restriction, so that people could put in what they want? Would that mean that someone would want to put a 14-story building on Luna Street? It could. And then, is that something the city would want to restrict?
Well, one of my questions is are other of the cities you're looking at have historic districts? Because my recollection of our code is that that's one of the bigger sections, and one of the most restrictive sections is the historic district.
And that could actually be a really good tool to control development in areas where we already have established neighborhood. It doesn't have to just be used for preservation. But these are just larger questions.
Yeah, I haven't run across the design review committee structure, any of the ones I've read about. They do have historic
Right.
areas.
Like,
In a different structure.
Well, and this has been an issue for developers to meet the aesthetic requirements in the downtown, which I won't go elaborate on now because I think we might hear from some people later and I just want to give them the opportunity to tell their own stories, but if they don't have to come, I'm gonna tell their stories. Or so, but I'll go back to my notes for that when I do that. Tim, did you find when you did this review, or Sandy, did you find like a section that you would sub out hours for theirs? Like you'd say, okay, so this section on ADUs is really good in St. Albans, we're gonna take that. Or this section on aesthetics in a downtown area, actually, this feels like it would fit Montpelier in terms of like keeping the quality of the downtown, but incentivizing development more. Are you seeing things like that where you're thinking, I'd swap this?
I am in terms of lack of complication, for sure.
I did like the news piece downtown piece. I also think this some of the flood language, the flood districts is just so crisp and simple and still protected and fine. You know, I think there's a couple of them that have really nice sections we could swap out. I want to do more homework on, or if anyone else is interested in the appeals part, and I'm trying to read through that.
Oh, yeah, that's very good.
State law or it is, so the communities aren't all.
It's state law. There's one sentence I'd suggested get at the state house that get eliminated, what the definition of a minor review. But this site appeals process it really varies from town to town based on the
appeals
state.
processes. I'm thinking. So one is the one where the guy down the street does the appeal and appeals your permit. That one, yes, I know that's being discussed in the state, but it's also every permit you get has a 15 or 30-day appeal period. And virtually no one ever appeals these things. So it ends up being this giant waste of time for everybody. That once you finally get through the whole gauntlet of getting a permit, you got your permit, then you gotta wait another 30 days.
I think if James were here, he would tell you that his experience was that there was somebody who killed in that time period. And then there was one that didn't, and he was so shocked that he actually got it. Whole office. Dance. We have one of the things that the municipalities can control, which city council did adopt, was changing the fee for appeals. Until recently, the city was basically subsidizing appeals. The fee was so low, it cost more in staff time to process it than to.
And we supported that and recommended that in one of our earliest things. So I'm glad to hear about that.
Did you see, I ran across, and I'm having trouble finding it, but there was a Congress of New Urbanism did a review of the city planning and zoning at some point. Do you have that? Historic?
Yeah, very matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be,
Like,
I think the historic artifacts are often very useful in helping, like, the path not taken. Why didn't we adopt this? It would be interesting.
And how things changed. I'm gonna go to Ben and then I'll come to you.
I'm sorry.
Just a couple things. One is, I don't know, maybe just things to track, but like thinking about tier 1A, like to the degree to which I understand it, right? It's to remove duplication of activity regulations. And so we want to make sure that like whatever zoning or changes that we're making, are the ones that allow us that fulfill the requirements to get tier 1A. That's really important. And then the second thing is just the 802 homes toolkit. Just thinking about are we making use of that? You know, you guys notice the 802 homes where they like developed like kind of kit homes, designs that are kind of standardized. And with the idea that a municipality could adopt some kind of form-based codes and build one of these, like it's not even a thing, just go do it. And I just wonder if there's an opportunity to do something.
Well, there certainly is, especially if there were an overlay district created.
Yeah.
So with the appeals, it's not just the appeals that's an issue. It's also the whole subdivision and or PUD process issue of the hearing that are set partly by state statute. But for instance, Plainfield is an example of an extreme where it takes 7 months at a minimum to get a PUD approved, which is how most people go through with a large development because of the credits that are given for density. Montpelier's is actually pretty good in about 3.5 months. But the one way to get it even shorter is to increase the definition of minor site plan review so that it can be even shorter. So it's not just the appeal process, but it's you have to give a warning for the hearing, then the hearing itself, and then the board has like over a month to write their decision. And then the appeal process begins. And then if there's an appeal, then it's, give up on the new timeline. So that whole process needs to be looked at.
And that's at a state level.
It's also at a town level. Montpelier's done a lot of work already, but it could be improved.
Okay.
And that it's important to think about the administration as well as the content of the ordinance.
Yeah. Alex.
At some meeting, I heard Mike talking about the code, and it may have been one of our meetings, talking about how there were various development regs around the state, and they were authored, if you will, by a small group of people. So there's a cluster of them that so-and-so did,
Yeah,
and
it's
another,
here.
was it here?
Yeah.
Have you looked at any codes that are recent that go beyond, I mean, because whatever code he inherited that he's trying to clean up and that we're talking about was one somebody else wrote.
Yeah.
The impression that there was already a kind of large, just to be honest, like I've asked people, how is the state, the department, about there's code. Like honestly, the answer I got back was they're pretty good. And I was under the impression that the planning commission had already done it. Am I wrong on that?
They did a thing in the summer to relax certain kinds of site plan review.
Years, there was a year, like multi-year, I was on council. Cleaning up year after year, but it was like working from the existing, so
Right.
the approach,
So
it wasn't a total rewrite, it was like, it had the same goal we're talking about, but it was definitely building on the existing.
right. So what I'm wondering is if you have come across any more recently composed and compiled codes that are out of that, 70s or 80s or whenever these codes were put in, 80s or,
Part of the problem is that many towns in the state use a consultant. And that consultant has been in business for almost 2 decades. So it's just a, regurgitation of that component. So it evolved over time, but it's the same thing.
Have you considered moving out of state?
Yeah, and well, what I wanted to propose is that Mira Weinberger is talking about creating a parent code, kind of a template for the whole state and maybe different levels of towns. Wouldn't it be cool if we could talk to Miro about Montpelier being a guinea pig?
Silver zone.
Yeah. And coming up with something, and we have kind of everything. We have a substantial historic district, we have floodplains. Would be a great, mid-sized town. I think would be a great candidate if we were interested. So let's build homes. But I mean, that might be another thing to pursue.
Yeah, I'm interested in where to go from here with this work. Like, are you thinking you want to do some more research, maybe meet with build Let's Build Homes and Weinberger and folks to learn more there, and then come with a set of recommendations to the next meeting? Or even if you can't do it holistically because it's too much, you perhaps could come with some directional guidance around, like, actually, we're pretty convinced at this point that we should keep the base of these codes, and you would sub out these 2 sections or something, or like these are real focus areas. And perhaps you'll get some guidance from this evening if we do get some feedback from developers. Maybe you could hear that and be responsive to that. But that could be one path forward. Or how are you thinking about your next steps? I know we have a meeting with the Planning Commission this week.
I think we need to defer to the Planning Commission at some level. I don't think it's appropriate for us to suggest something that really upsets them. And
sure, but you can suggest something
to Mike and to Matt, because particularly Mike has put a lot of effort in the last 10 years into the zoning ordinance, and don't want to seem like we're negative about all that effort. Okay. Well, then
also, I think they're looking to you.
But the levels of problems are at the, paragraph by paragraph. Where we have some problems like, sorry.
No, yeah, no, go for it.
But paragraph by paragraph needs to be revised. And so there's that level, and then there's the upper levels of those 3 general chapters. And I should have said site plan review, because that's probably the worst. For vague, appealable language. And then there's the administrative process with the appeals and the hearing sequence. So there's like 3 levels. And then there's the kind of the overall philosophy level. So, within that, I don't want to do too much I don't want to get ahead of the planning commission.
So I'll make my point and then coming to you, Dan, so just to wrap that up, which is, I think we're looking to you for, we are a policy committee, basically. We have been moving forward policies with the support of city council. There is support to look into this, us or the planning commission, or to do it jointly.
Yeah.
So I think your leadership is welcomed, and you are in a position of leadership to help shape that conversation, and you're doing the research to do it in an informed way. So I appreciate you're not just leaping into this, but there might be some things you want to suggest, and I think you can do so respectfully, and we can let the conversation later tonight and the conversation with the planning commission help to shape that. Coming over to you, Dan, and then Sean, I'm coming to you on Zoom.
I guess I'd like your considered opinion on what the biggest deterrent is. I hear there's land use restrictions, which might be a deterrent. There's the administrative process and confusion over what's permitted where, might be a deterrent. And then there's the appeals process, which would also be a deterrent. Is there a weighing up of which pieces are the biggest?
Also important. I mean, yeah. Looking at when
I mean, for me, it's been the process and how it's, because we've got a written code, which at some level, some people may say is okay. But even within that, it's how one takes that code and works it or implements. And it's smooth.
Can you give one example, Tim?
Close to me,
Sorry, we cannot hear Tim.
Building that on an approved city lot. The time I started my conversation with the county office, it took me almost 9 months to get a permit to build a house in Montpelier on a lot that was pretty. It's just crazy, and the number of layers that were thrown in along the way. Nobody ever tells you up front. We ended up hiring 3 different kinds of engineers. Almost $15,000 just in engineering fees. If you want to build affordable housing, our process is not one.
And it's because you're experiencing a layered approach. You're oh, you would need to do this, and you do this, but oh, you need to also do this. Oh, well, you didn't know that earlier in the process. Maybe there could have been co-benefits. No one's walking you through the whole experience right on the front end. Yeah,
exactly. And I've built homes here over the years multiple times, so this experience was just so foreign to me. The town and and it's not.
You're a pro. This means your job.
Yeah, but if you haven't been through it, I don't think you can fully appreciate what happens to people when they get into the system. It's not to me means.
And it'll be really important to talk to the other developers about this.
Yeah.
The last example I can give is working on Lindsay's building and I found the planning department super supportive and helpful, but it still took a crazy amount of time. And part of it is just the regulations that overlapped each other, sprinklers and tying in with a new main were a big problem. And so also interfacing between state and city requirements. One big area is that Montpelier claims jurisdiction over things the state also claims jurisdiction over, and we have to sort that out. That is not a good thing for anybody in the project. To have to be sorting between multiple jurisdictions.
Okay. Thank you, Sean, online here.
Hi, yes, thank you, Sean Monahan, Planning Commissioner. Oh,
Hi. Welcome.
sorry, I don't know why there's feedback. So I just wanted to chime in and say that.
Turn my volume up, you can, but then it echoes all over the place because everybody has their microphone. So
Can people hear me okay?
Here, Sean. Sean, just give us 1 second here. The sound. Okay. Turn the microphone off on your computer. Okay, great. Sean, give it a go.
All right. Thank you. I just wanted to say that the Planning
Nope.
Commission, I can't hear me.
What were you doing before that allowed us to hear?
Closer to the microphone. I think it's this microphone.
Like the lower.
Just 1 second. Can you mute anyone?
That's right.
How about now?
No, it's a lot of feedback. Can you mute in the lower?
Or just clicking right on it rather than the caret, you click on the actual microphone, will that mute it?
Just the lower left hand mic.
All right. I can't hear you, but can you hear me well? Okay. I just wanted to say that the Planning Commission, we are deep into the process of reworking the regs right now. That was mentioned earlier. We're definitely open to, I don't want to speak for everybody on the Planning Commission, but we're definitely open to feedback in this process. And if there's something that the Housing Committee has suggestions for, they should absolutely bring it up. We're hoping to have this done by this summer. But we're events are about to overtake things here. We are doing major changes here. We might not get down to 80 pages, but expect there to be major rewrites here in the next couple months. And you should be seeing more of us here tonight. Some more of us should be logging on in a little bit here for the developer portion of this meeting.
Thank you so much. That's great. I really appreciate that. And we look forward to working with you as you move forward, and that's really encouraging. We'll probably get more of an update when we talk to more Planning Commission members later on this week, but it's great to hear that you're open to, big changes should we have recommendations around that. And as you do your work, and I know yours is moving along and you're certainly not going to wait for us, we could just be in touch as you do that. So if there's a section you want us to look at, let's just keep in contact about that. Yeah, Lauren.
Just one thought on the process, especially for, if Sandy and Tim are digging in. It seems like there's pieces where there's recommendations, examples from other communities where they are accomplishing the same goals as ours in a more streamlined, clear, clean way. And then there's also the policy decisions. And so I think flagging for the committee where this feels like we're being too restrictive and the policy we want to recommend changing versus just this accomplishes the same thing, substantively from our perspective, and it's just a better way to do it. So there might be a list of things that could be recommendations that in that vein, and there might be some interesting policy discussions of, we're taking a more aggressive approach than all the other communities we looked at or something like that, like we learned around the sprinklers, for example. So there might be areas like that too that could be, but
just from a process, where are you suggesting that, first of all, who's doing that? Where does it go? Does it go to the planning commission? Does it come to this full committee to sign on to? Does it go to the council?
The process we had talked about was that Tim and Sandy are on a subcommittee doing this. I'm an occasional interloper. And then they'll bring their recommendations here. We'll approve them, and then they'll go to the planning commission. But we're having networking meetings with the planning commission chairs just to stay aligned on like, oh, you're looking at this, we're looking at that, or oh, you're, just in touch, keeping in touch. Perhaps mute me now, and Sean, I don't know if you had any follow-up before we move on.
Nope. I definitely look forward to hearing from you. I'm glad you're meeting with Marie and Aaron this week.
Great. Mohan, are we gonna need to do that every time someone speaks all night, you think? Or is there a solve we could put in place? Okay, thanks. Well, we might just need a lot of support through the question and answer piece then. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, I think if folks are okay, I think we have a plan, which is a loose plan, but it's a plan nonetheless, which is Tim and Sandy will take their data and research and start to think of themes per Lauren's suggestion around like, is it policy? Is it, more of a style change around, making it more user friendly, but you keep the policy the same? Are we seeing areas in other communities that we want to pull in and just completely replace? And we'll bring it here for review if we have a suggestion, and then approval before it goes to planning commission, but we'll keep in touch routinely with the planning commission as they do. Okay, so let's then move on to, Alan, sorry. Alan, this is going to be a technical feat, so just hang on 1 second. I'm going to be muted, then you're going to go.
Okay, can folks hear me? Yes, thank you. First, I apologize, I've come to the meeting late. And I was just going to ask, because you were going over some of the vacant building discussions, I did not know if that had happened, because if it has, I would like to address some of my concerns, which could also come up under your next discussion of developers. So I'm so sorry I missed the 6 o'clock opening. I just didn't know if you would like to hear a few comments. If you even addressed it, I missed it. Or if you'd rather I talk about it when you have the developers speak in a little while. Thank you.
Okay, if you are giving input on challenges that are on challenges related to development or opportunities, I think it would be great to give it during the 7:30 to 8:30 time period, should you be willing to do that. If you have specific areas of the code that you think Tim and Sandy should look into as we communicate with the planning commission, I think that is right for, giving comment on right now.
I think he was asking about the vacancy kind of conversation.
Vacancy conversation. Yeah, we did do sorry, I didn't catch that at all. It was a little garbled to me at the beginning, but thank you. The vacancy conversation, we did do an update. It is currently, there is an ordinance being developed. It hasn't been fleshed out yet. We've gotten input from the lawyer for the city, and we've been getting other input from other communities who've done similar things. So it should be at our next meeting that there will be a draft to review. And then I'll get muted in case you want to follow.
Thank you. May I? So yes, I would like to address probably some of those concerns. And they do, in my situation, they actually roll into the next discussion as well. Some of the reasons why I've had vacancies have been related to zoning, have been related to timing, Act 250, gross center reapplications. It's not always so simplistic. So the example would be Court Street, which thank goodness, and I have to thank the Planning Commission and all their hard work, and the City Council, and Mike and their team, they've opened the doors to be able to do 15 plus units. Also, under Act 47 and 181, that has allowed me to do things at Sabins without triggering Act 250 and vice versa, which also picks up the redstone. The complexity is the 5 mile, 5-year radius. No matter what I do, if I trigger Act 250 on any single project, it picks up every project I have. So when the paradigm changed with COVID, we had vacancies. And then we started doing savings. And we've been very lucky that Act 47 and 181 have really made some open doors. And again, I have to commend the Planning Commission and the City Council. They've really opened the doors so we can do large quantities of units. Otherwise, the 10th unit is a trigger. So in my case, the 16,000 square feet needs to be converted to residential space. But we're thinking in smaller, a smaller square footage now in the new paradigms. So to take 16,000 square feet, it has to become more than 10 units. And the problem was that was going to trigger Act 250 for me, Sabins, the Elks, and the Redstone all at once. So that was just one of my challenges and why the buildings have gone empty. Thank goodness the gates have opened. The state has helped. Mike and his team have helped, and we're now making progress right now. We're taking estimates and going forward. And thank you so much for the time and appreciate all the hard work. I think sometimes people think it's empty for no reason. It's usually empty because it's quite complex.
Thanks. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. And I hope you do stay for the 7:30 to 8:30 conversation too, because you might want to restate some of those as other issues come up. And that's really, really helpful to hear. As we have the vacancy ordinance drafted, we'll do public process around that. We'll before it moves. And of course, the city council would ultimately approve anything like that. So we hope to hear from you again as we have a draft of that as well. I'll mute myself so you can say any final comments on that, Alan, and then we'll move on to the Housing Trust Fund.
I just thank you all for the time and look forward to moving forward. When you do have the draft, I'll try to give some comments then. And thank you all for the hard work. And thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, moving on to the Housing Trust Fund. Sean and Dan. Thank you. And I think you're going to share your screen.
Yep. Yeah, Dan's. Yes. Okay. Just do this.
And is there any TF you want to do?
Yeah, well, Dan pulls it up. I can just
Go for it.
high level folks who weren't the Housing Trust Fund. We had overhauled a couple of years ago, and tried to move in the direction of being more towards building more housing. Previous iterations have been more focused, I think, on affordability, more first-time home buyers, of other pieces like that, and the build of the last iteration had focused largely on larger projects like the Taylor Street project, things like that could be seed money, having a few criteria in there since the dollars are going to be relatively small, but if it could be a first dollar, they could leverage others, as well as the accessible dwelling unit program, kind of the sense of when the state program ran out of funds, that was a good program. This could add on, and then the shared equity program. So the conversations we've been having together as a committee and the priority work, I think, leading into when Dan and I looked at this was, in addition to those, particularly since they have a lot of benefits, a lot of the rationale for choosing those three at the time, also given this goal of having the 75 units per year, the fact that the ADU program still has the funding streams through the state, so hasn't been triggered to kind of need that through this program. The fact that the shared equity isn't adding, contributing to that 75 units per year per se. So Dan and I were charged with looking to see how could we add on either a kind of a fourth bucket or potential additional channel for funds in the Housing Trust Fund to be used with the committee and the city council toward this the city's higher level goal.
And remind us, we put in $150,000 in the budget this year into the Housing Trust Fund, and there's a additional funds already in there. So do we know the total?
We don't have the total right now, but it's it assumes 150,000 starting, or 250,000 starting, and then the grants for the initial affordable housing project grants are I think $50,000 maximum for each one. The process is that starting July 1st, the Housing Trust opens for requests for proposals. Those go out for affordable housing project grants first, or as it is now. Those go out to affordable housing project grants and the ADU loans and the shared equity down payment assistance grants. That window closes August 15th. The Housing Trust Fund, the planning department does a review to make sure that all of the applications are complete. And then we see those in September. We make a recommendation, planning department makes a recommendation, and then city council votes to award those grants. And then if there is money left over, the Housing Trust or the Housing Committee can initiate a second round of funding. And so one of the proposals, a key section of the proposal is that we add a fourth section, which I just called Montpelier Limited Grants and Loans, to be a flexible tool to use, as Sean said, to advance the city's housing goals. The way I've written them now, it would only be a tool that would be available on subsequent funding rounds. So if, for instance, in the initial RFP period, we got no requests or none that we could award, or we awarded one and there was still money left over that we wanted to fund a project with, we could issue an RFP then for limited grants and loans. So, but part of what we needed to do for that, I don't know that. So this is one track that we could go down. I did alter the purpose of the Housing Trust Fund language to make that goal a little bit more related to the purpose. I don't think it necessarily needs to be changed to that, but and we could still keep it, or still keep that section, but that would make it a bit more germane.
And I think, and a reference germane and referencing the city plan. So it's a good way of bringing in that, kind of helping encompass around that 75 unit goal into here without saying 75 units, but pointing to that, just making that goal encompassing of the.
Yeah. So in order to activate that, you would have the Housing Trust Fund would have to issue an RFP.
Yes, so
that it's purposefully loose so that the Housing Trust Fund could issue 5 different kinds of RFPs over a period of time.
No, we would only so the eligibility criteria are going to be spelled out once we go through. It'll, and I also have the application form that is proposed.
So I get it.
It'll be one, but it's broad.
Yeah,
not the need to do it.
Well, and the language is kind of purposefully broad so that people can approach us with unusual projects or things that they would like that they might otherwise not happen, to be creative with assistance from the city. So here, the amounts available for grants and loans, currently the affordable housing project grants are $25,000 to $150,000.
Supposed to be able to see that if I should just shut off the lights for a few minutes. Yeah, that would be great. And maybe you can make it a little bigger.
Yeah, I can try that.
because It's like an eye test.
Yeah, sorry.
Which I fail every one of, but that's okay.
Let's see if I can zoom in.
Yeah, so I think you're saying add this fourth category of Montpelier grants and loans and change the purpose to allow it, do a first pass for the first 3 purpose items, and then on the second pass, allow for this for a set of eligibility criteria. You're gonna go over it just a second.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so the idea is that we're not taking away from the original purpose of the affordable housing project grants. This would be kind of a backup way if there wasn't any. We could still spur housing. I can't figure out how to zoom. Oh yeah, there we go.
100% up to like.
Got it. There we go. Not 308. Okay. So the idea would be there would be $10,000 grants available, and then per parcel, and then $50,000 0% interest loan per project, which is similar to what the ADU program is. But this would be for whatever the applicant wanted to do. So this is all current language until we get to 104. So to be eligible for the limited grant or loan, the applicant must own real property in Montpelier at time of application. If the applicant is requesting a 0% loan, the applicant agrees to encumber the property with a lien for repayment of that loan upon the sale of the subject property, which is the same as the shared equity housing. Applicant must demonstrate capability and intention of completing the project for which loan grant is being applied. The applicant must demonstrate how the project meets needs identified in Montpelier's most recent housing needs assessment or otherwise furthers the goals of the Housing Trust Fund. Applicant must not be disqualified from receiving grants or loans from the city of Montpelier. And so then it also sets out priorities for funding. So it meets more of the needs identified in Montpelier's housing needs assessment compared to competing applications. If there's an income, if the person applying is below a threshold income, if they want to include a housing affordability covenant, subsidy covenant, which is carried over from the affordable housing grant, section 101. But that's not a requirement that's not envisaged as a requirement for this new section. Applicant can leverage additional funding sources. Project includes more above code energy efficient. A lot of these are copied from the affordable housing grant language in 101. Project is located within Montpelier Growth Center boundary, or project will result in a new primary residence for the applicant.
So the gist is though that the new piece is that the applicant's gross annual household income does not exceed 120.
No, people can be whatever income to do that. It just would be a priority for funding. If that. So people could theoretically approach this for anything. If they want to apply for a $10,000 grant to see for an engineering study, and even if nothing comes out of that, that's still something that we can help with. If somebody wants to apply for a bridge loan or a construction loan for $50,000 to build a modular home on an empty lot, they could do that and then repay that money either at the sale of the building or by mutual agreement with the city. if somebody wants to revamp a third floor, and use $50,000 for sprinkler system, that could be in this, and there would be under, as envisaged, there would be no affordability covenant to it. The idea would be just to get more housing units to meet the housing unit.
And,
growth.
I'm sorry, I'm so new to this, but
That's
have
okay.
we done loans before with
Yes.
this fund? Yes,
Yes.
we have. Okay, so it has acted as a revolving.
Yeah, so this is actually, this year would actually be our first go through with with the old rule, the old rules, which
Yeah.
were just approved last year. So, prior to that, there was a different process. It was much more kind of ad hoc. So this would be a new process for all of the housing committee, regardless of whether these changes were made or not.
Do you propose a timeline here as well? That is the timeline different than the timeline in the old?
No,
The calendar was built in there. I think the piece, as Dan was saying, is that kind of second, if there aren't funding, that's where the kind of augmentation of the calendar would be.
right. So the initial RFP period is 6 weeks. It's in the housing committee's wheelhouse to initiate another RFP period if and that was the same previously. It's just with this addition, it would be restricted to the RFP period, so as not to interfere, not to take the place of the housing affordability grant, if there were such a project.
So there's three things that would happen for which the first RFP period will be open.
Mhm.
And this fourth one would only be if there were leftover funds.
Correct.
And the fourth round would only be for this large, this capacious. So
Yeah, essentially a second round, because the first is concurrent, but yeah, fourth bucket.
right,
with
the
buckets.
first is concurrent with what?
Oh, I mean, with the first three types of applications.
Yes, in a secondary round, RFP round, any of the four
Got it.
buckets can still be
So the
available, so
first
people
round,
can still.
3 buckets, second
Second
round,
round,
4
4
buckets. Got it.
And to the question I think Alyssa was getting as far as the experience with the revolving loan in the past, because Dan was getting at, even the old one here we're talking about is new in the sense of just being approved, but the one that had happened for a couple of decades, the first time home buyer piece, that was the part that was the revolving loan, where the loan was given out and it wasn't didn't have to be repaid until the home was sold. And that was a piece that we looked at previous go around a few times ago. Are there ways we could try to increase the velocity of the revolving funds to help, more folks on that? And there's a lot of conversation. Matt wasn't here then, so I'm not sure if you know that side, but I know Mike weighed in as far as really the city's preference for having that 0% in big ways, as opposed to having some higher than 0%, which would, after a point, which would help people with the cash flow of starting the project, but also incentivize paying it back sooner to increase the velocity of the funds. But from the city's experience, and I think the way a lot of the financing worked, that wasn't something the city did. So that was why, based on that conversation we had a couple of years ago, building this with this Dan's teeing up, we stayed with that 0% loan payable on sale of the project, as that had been the city's kind of default preference before.
Right, and you avoid a lot of potential hurdles or challenges that way.
Questions for Dan and Sean? So I think then we will be if folks are comfortable, it sounds like that the steps here would be, we would vote to add this fourth category with, under the terms that they have laid out. And then this would then go to city council for consideration. Yeah, so Lauren and then Ben.
Did you think about, or do you have a recommendation? I'm just thinking because, reapplications could eat up the whole thing. Here, like,
Or
is there
one.
any,
Or one.
yeah, they would.
Mhm.
So, and I don't know like how that's worked in the past. Is there, any thought of if we want to keep a certain amount aside for the home equity, the down payment fees, or like how has that been approached in the past? Like obviously this leaves flexibility to be assessed and make determinations or recommendations of the city to council, but has there been thought of a balance between them, or is it like, got great projects, let's just move on?
So the shared equity and the ADU programs have separate state funding. And the housing trust fund was meant as a supplement to that, should the state funding not be there in the future. They have been, those programs have been renewed, so there's not an anticipated need for them. But I think it's still probably a wise bet to keep it on. Yeah.
So, I don't think you would need to fight it again.
Right.
All right, over to Ben and then Matt.
Well, just, the history of the program, right? My comments for the most of the time have been used by downstream as like the community matching component for larger projects.
Yes.
It strikes me like, sorry, I haven't read this in a while, but like the ability to leverage other funding would be the key consideration, right? But like MHC is going to give money to a project, or if there is a demonstrated.
Yeah, please. Come on in.
So is that so
Chair over there, sorry. Dan.
thank you. So one of the priorities is demonstrating being able to leverage other funding. Is that sufficient, or is that, do you think that would be mandatory? Okay. Yeah, sure.
People want more time with this before we bring it to a vote?
Well, we haven't actually
Sorry.
seen,
You can answer that question.
I just want to randomly every now and then I will get a piece of paper that says this person has repaid their loan to the city, from the city.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to, it was tied to Down Street at all. In the past, it seems like the city helped with down payments and then people sell the house and then I have to fill out a piece of paper. What I would say though, is it seems completely undocumented and out of control.
Well, we can fix that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if we're
We'll
gonna.
do your job.
Well, that's the piece that was closed out though. That's the one that existed from what, 2003
Yeah.
until.
I think many of these are even over.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm just saying that. In addition to having a new policy, we also need a new set of,
Administrative practices.
yes, we need
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
Great. We'll let
Into
you think about that. Great. Yeah.
And to that point, just on the sitting on it, the one thing on that I just noticed when Dan had it up, I know we had maybe a little bit of version when Dan's email went out and I had it in a Google Doc in the back. I noticed, I think one of the framing piece that wasn't crucial I had, but I fell off on here. But the other part, I think to Matt's point, was the last section. Dan also made some edits to it. I made after, as far as the roles, speaking to what the roles of the city council is, the roles to this committee and so forth. I think that section will be important to have those kind of standard operating procedures in place, to Matt's point, to make sure that things aren't.
Where are these documents going to live? Like, who has to manage them?
As it stands right now, as approved by the city council last year, I think it's the city managers. Yeah.
And
Maintain.
it was a discussion before this was voted last year, city council adopted it, so I think they were at the time very aware of who was managing this. Alex?
I just want to, for my 2 cents worth, I don't want to approve something that I haven't actually looked at.
Yeah.
And I don't think I mean, this discussion doesn't count.
We look at it.
Right, and so if, I mean, you did some edit, you said, then, so I'd just like
Yeah,
to
we can
see
make
what you guys did.
Sure, we can double check. The one I listened to around the other day.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
you received ahead of time, and there haven't been edits since then. That said, it is dense. And do you all need a vote on this now to put these in place for this year, though? Like, if we don't vote tonight, will we not be able to expand this grant and loan program this year?
I don't think so. I think the deadline for that will be. I mean, because it would affect secondary. It depends on if the subsequent rounds of funding are. I think yes, if these are gonna be in place by the July 1st RFP, which wouldn't include this section. But if it doesn't, if the rules can be altered after the first RFP is already in place, then no, we wouldn't need that.
Okay.
I think the answer is as written, we could wait till the next meeting, give people more time. It would be that constraint if people wanted to do a greater overhaul that would impact that first round, that would be.
Okay,
funded.
here's the proposal, and then we're gonna switch to the next topic. And then would you mind stopping sharing?
Yeah, I'm trying my computer. My computer is ancient.
Okay, my proposal is this, that I would love for you to look into the implications of the delay on the grant process and loan process for this year. We can call a special meeting just to talk about this for 30 minutes and vote on it. And I would say, let's do that, so that people have more time to get comfortable with the material. So if it's going to delay, and for some reason we can't put this in place this year, let's call a special meeting. So could you let me know that by
Yes.
this week?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, moving into the next topic. First off, thank you guests for joining us today. We are moving into the developer feedback section. I would love to just go around and do a round of introductions so we can see who's in the room here. And online, should people be willing to come up to you and introduce yourselves there as well, we'll move to you next. The online system's a little clunky, so before we go to online, I'm going to tell you how that's gonna go. But why don't we start over here?
I'm Gabe Wajas, and I've got a small development firm here in Montpelier, Acre Development. We built a triplex here in town. I'm Lucky Corbin. We did the Lane Street conversion. I'm the sponsor Isabel Circle project, and I've done some stuff with my brother on New Hampshire townhomes.
Nice to put a face with a name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah, of course.
But we're going to.
I'm gonna have the committee members.
Sean Shannon.
Alex Halas of the Housing Committee
And the development.
and the
Board.
Development Review Board.
Yeah, she's deep in it.
Dan Kopic, Housing Committee.
Actually, the community and economic development specialist for the city.
Also a developer.
Presidential.
Residential builder. Okay, residential builder. Alyssa Shuren, housing committee chair.
Housing provider.
Well.
James Moore. Primarily infill. Single family to. Stephen Cohen, project manager at Down Street Housing Community Development. Also very small scale developer with a couple multi-family units here in Montpelier.
My name is Zachary Hunter, residential building contractor, looking to pivot that expertise towards small infill development opportunities. Housing advocate.
Sandy Bitstein, member of the Housing Committee and member of the Executive Suite Team for
Tim Heaney, member of the House Committee.
And developer and realtor, just in case people don't know. Yeah, okay.
Tim Sinnott, I'm a planning commissioner and not a developer.
Okay, and okay, we're gonna go online, which means I'm gonna tee you up. Let's do Sean, Alan, Doug. If you don't mind in that order, because I basically can't, once they shut my mic off, we can only hear from you and you will not hear us any longer. And so if you could just go in that order, Sean, Alan, Doug, Zach, and just introduce yourselves and your connection to this, that'd be great.
John Lenahan, Planning Commissioner.
I think it's. I'm Zach Watson. I'm with Central Vermont Habitat for Humanity, and I was invited to join the conversation. Thank you for the invitation.
Am I supposed to speak? Hi, Alan Goldman, 40-year affordable housing provider. We're very familiar with regs, Plainfield, Marshfield, East Montpelier, Barry, Waitsfield, Middlesex, Grand Isle. Worked in all these places for many years, and on Montpelier's regs since 1990. And I served as a planning commissioner from 2010 through 2014.
Doug Sorsey, Montpelier resident, obviously, and one of the owners of Savins Pasture.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for being here. We're really glad to have you all here in the room today. I think I got everybody. And we just wanted to open up and to get feedback from you all on, any hiccups, roadblocks, challenges that you're facing to development in Montpelier. Your work, your experience will really shape our work. And I'll talk about this in front of the City Council tomorrow. But some of the things that have been on our radar that we've been working on include, getting money in for the Housing Trust Fund through the City Council. We succeeded at getting $150,000 in that budget. Monitoring and engaging on the state appeals process, looking into a vacancy ordinance right now, the local sprinkler ordinance in town, country club road review, tax stabilization, the development regulations, short-term registration. Those are just the committees we're working on over the last couple of months. There is more work that we'll be doing, over the next months, but that's a lot in the pipeline right now. So we're going to wait till some of that pans out. Your input is going to really shape all of those subcommittees work. So why don't we just open it up? We can hear from you. What the question is, just what challenges or opportunities do you see in terms of what we could do in Montpelier to make development easier, and specifically housing? And the folks online, you can just raise your hand and then we'll go to you. But for anyone else in the room, just speak up. Everyone online can hear you until we have to do the little manual switch.
Well, I'll just throw out there. I mean, I think you guys are on the right track. Like the appeals, that it's a state level issue for the most part. Although the city does have some control over, what that process might look like if there's fees associated with it. And the sprinkler, I mean, that's a great issue. Thank you for bringing that forward. There were some good conversations already last city council meeting. So, I think we just have to be real about the situation we're in. I mean, again, I've done some stuff in New Hampshire, so comparatively, workforce is a big problem, right? Like, how do you do things in a way that people define as affordable, that people can pay rents for, right? If you look at most of the things that we love and we see in the built environment, we couldn't afford to build those things. We just couldn't do it. We don't have the right resources. The materials are too expensive. So we have to think about how we can do things differently. And, we've seen a lot of discussion from a lot of the guys on that side of the room, like, about modular, and that can be a solution. But I will tell you, like, in New Hampshire, we're building for much less than you can build modular and put it together and all the other things associated with it. It's just a lot more expensive. So when we're thinking about how we draw people, I think we need a community of developers here, some local developers that know our area. And it's gonna take some supportive policies, right? It's gonna take support. CHIP Act from state of Vermont was great. That's gonna have to go through city council. You're gonna have to get approvals for things like that. Tax stabilization can be another way. We just need to realize, like, hey, when we see, you know, Hone and other guys who are coming up, trying to get their feet, you know, firmly established. If there's some supportive structure, we're gonna need to do that because things just aren't penciling in the moment for a lot of projects. It's just very difficult. Conversion stuff, I think, you know, if you have your own crews, I think that pencils, but if you're trying to build new rental projects, I just don't. When you go talk to the Vectors, what they're doing in Barrie, I've had those conversations. If they weren't doing wholesale, and even doing wholesale, they're charging like $3,100 a month for rent, for two bedroom units. I mean, is that what people want here? It's not what they want here, right? So we have to think about how do we support new developers so we have our own, you know, we have a workforce that's been attracted here. Anyway, those are just some things that I see.
When you're saying New Hampshire is so much cheaper and you're saying that's a workforce problem, it's because they can access workers more easily. And yeah,
Well, and you know, the regulatory burden here in Vermont, I mean, they've shown it's like, whether it's Act 250 or you name it, right? Like 180,000 per single family home is the regulatory burden.
Yeah.
That's a pretty serious, think about that. You want to build a single family home before you even start, it's $180,000 worth of whatever it is, right?
Right.
Can we lean some of that off? I wonder, this is a city question, Mr. Doyle. I mean, I wonder, like, hey, if we want housing so bad, do we really need to be charging all the fees that we charge for all the permits and everything? Like, shouldn't we just be saying build anything you can build? Like, we're happy to have you build. Like, do we need the extra revenue? I don't know the answer to that, right? You guys deal with the budget. Are there things we can do to say, look, we really want you here, and therefore we're going to waive? Yeah,
that's a great question that I think we need to look into. I can tell you that, you know, the idea has came to council about raising the existing fees to align with the administrative needs. And we said no to that, except for new regulations that hadn't been established at the time of creation of the fee structure. So I do think it's something that we need to continue to look at. I mean, that seems to me like the most obvious way to incentivize. If we want housing, we make the fees.
The other thing I'll say, and I don't want to monopolize because you got a lot of people who have a lot of experience, but I will say we need to recognize that we're in a competition, that there are communities that people can build, and they're building in Berlin and they're building in Barrie, and we have to ask ourselves why that's happening. And so when we're thinking about fee structures or how easy they are to work with or any of that stuff, I think you just have to recognize people have choices. You're going to invest a lot of capital and take a lot of risks, right? Where are you going to do it?
Hey, can I just ask one question of where's that? Where are you getting that 180?
That's like Vermont Futures problem.
Vermont Futures.
Yeah, James, please.
Thanks for doing this. I think it's awesome. So I was putting this together. I was God, I'm just gonna go complain. That doesn't feel good. But I appreciate you wanting the feedback. I swear, it really doesn't. But as I was thinking about this, I tried to bucket things into four different buckets. The first was accountability to goals. The second was direction of our policy. The third was pace of change, and the fourth was cost of doing business. When it comes to starting with accountability to goals, and the city's had meaningful housing goals for literally decades. And most recently that was increased to 75 units a year. Over the last 6 years, we averaged 8 new units. And so while there's been kind of a clear desire and vision, or the municipal policies and actions haven't changed for a little bit of time. So just changing the goal doesn't change it. Actually address some of the policies that are contributing. I also think I'd love to see more accountability to this, like reviewing that on a regular basis. How we doing? How we tracking? Where the permits at? What's in the way? What do different department heads have for ideas of what to do that. In terms of direction of policy, I think the planning department has been slow to implement change. And at times has actually straight out been opposed to stronger housing policies. I think that's really problematic. We have not had a major update to our zoning regulations in a decade, despite never hitting our housing goals. So it goes back to the accountability piece. If the system that we're working in isn't working, then we gotta change it if we expect different outcomes. One is underway now, which is really exciting. I think that process is going to take more. And I don't think it needs to. And I've had the opportunity to watch the last planning commission meeting. And I was frankly shocked when the planning director, before there's even been a resolution, was telling the planning commission members, we're going to oppose a bunch of, the staff is not going to support a bunch of what you guys want. And that to me was just like rather shocking. One, the commission is the one that set the policy. And then two, to have that as kind of the people set going in, I thought was probably. Councilmember Doyle mentioned the increasing of the development fees. That was proposed by the planning. Like that was the planning department's idea, was to go to city council and ask for more money. It wasn't?
No.
It was not the planning department's idea. They were asked to see become revenue neutral.
By
council.
Pay for themselves through the fees.
Who asked?
City manager, Kelly.
Okay.
First, Kelly.
But you did support it. Mike did support it.
Yes.
And spoke on behalf of it here.
Yeah.
So even though we're slicing it pretty close, like I think if James's point was the planning director did support the fee increase, it's true. Because he was asked to get to a revenue neutral place. Yeah. And you did increase the appeals fees, which did have some support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The city plan that was passed this last year explicitly called for expanding our growth center to include most of Res 9000. The planning department in the fall of 2025, just after the plan was adopted, went to the city council and requested that they not do them. And so that didn't happen. And that would have exempted most development in Res 9000 from 250. Now that will likely not happen until Tier 1 is adopted, probably early 2027. The planning department has advocated on the sprinkler issue to stay with the state code or stay with the municipal code rather than updating to match the state code. And I just, for me, I look at all of it just kind of in surprise, but this is the planning department. This is the pace of policy, and this is the direction of our policy. I think that our zoning regulations are they largely seek to preserve the status quo. And in fact, they were designed to basically, they looked district by district and said, I can't remember if it was 80% or 90% compliance. So that there's a bunch of stuff that is in our communities that isn't even allowed currently. And that's by design, how they were created, haven't changed in quite a while. My experience at the development review board has been painful and incredibly expensive. I think there was some training offered to try and address some of that. But my experience was that members routinely ask questions that are beyond the legal scope of the permit in question. They allow the public to do the same on one simple curb cut project. That unnecessarily added $10,000 expense. Get a curb cut that the DPW selected the location. The Gabe's point of like, we can go, we're in competition here in town, we want stuff to happen. That was an incredibly painful and expensive process to go through as somebody to try to get something done. The permitting fees for 4-unit quadplex, subdivision fee, curb cut fee, zoning fee, river corridor fee, DPW fee, building permit fee, monitoring connection fees. Those will exceed $10,000, probably closing on $50,000. That's very material for a project. I do think that there have been a number of red spots lately. First off, I would say working with some of the staff in the planning department has been awesome. Meredith Randall is like, I think, we're lucky to have her. She's been very supportive, very responsive, very creative, like very clear. She knows those right side and out. The city council a little while back allowed 6 units to go on any lot certified municipal sewer and water. It's huge. That makes every single project that I've been looking at possible. That would not have been possible with our current zoning rules. So that change was really impactful for. I think there will be good stuff to come from that. The planning commission updated steep slope rules, major amount of subdivision thresholds, major matter site plan thresholds. The city council requiring appellants to pay for the administrative costs of their appeals to the DOT. And I think when we look around, like there are developers who want to do stuff. That's the best news. Is I think we can turn the ship and actually get projects built. But from a newbie, it's been very challenging. I appreciate you taking it.
Just to clarify, the 10 to 15,000, that's just city, right? That's just, yeah. Questions?
Thank you. That was so comprehensive. Okay, yeah.
Thank you for that. I have one more, well, here's a question. The M&M beverage lot. Yeah. The city has put out at least 2 RFPs on that, maybe 3. And in the latest one, the last one that went out, we basically said, make us an offer. Like, I mean, it's like basically $1 known thing, $1, right? So there's $1 of like, I don't know what the acreage is, but it's a lot in the capital city of Vermont. Basically, the city is saying, we're willing to give this away for $1, and we haven't had any takers.
I've actually spoken with Matt a bunch about that. I think it's a special lot because it's like everyone who drives into town from that direction sees what's there. It's pretty like and as you know, it's a decent chunk of land. Yeah. The challenge, I think there are a number of challenges. It's not wide enough in its triangular shape to have a corridor building. Right. Like a building where you've got a central corridor, 2 stairs. Like there are some efficient ways to build that maybe can pencil. And that lot, unless you do a credit method, it's a creative idea to like elevate and actually have traffic go underneath. And then you could actually get enough of a rectangle that you could get a decent number of units. However, then you dig in and you start looking at the design overlay district stuff. The windows need to line up with buildings story. The architectural style needs to line up with everything else downtown.
the roof lines are not supposed to be higher ceiling. Actually use the full height that allowed necessary. You know, there's just a bunch of other stuff, and then it's, well, you can't have housing on the first level, so it's gotta be, you've got an empty retail rate, so you've got to build a floor that has empty retail. Who's gonna pay for that? And then so it's just like the number, the math doesn't unless it does something like, you know, the city says, yeah, we'll pay for the fancy facades to make it look historic or different or whatever, or the same. And we'll put a welcome center on the first floor and traffic can drive underneath, and we'll sell the rights to build above. Then the math might. I think it's just challenging altogether.
Just one sec, Tim had his hand, I'll come to you just one second, go ahead.
Good point of interest, I think for that site, there is a building that was designed and approved for that site. Greg Gossett designed it for the city back when they were trying to do the M&M thing. And all the issues that you talked about, even if they weren't exact in that plan, they were approved. I would run with that. Yeah. You know, in terms of the process, I think part of what's happened, Ben, is that the first few RFPs were so bad. I mean, they were just like, people read them as like, why would I get involved with this? It was just brutally bad. The way they were written, what they expected of a developer or anybody that was interested, people just walked away. So unfortunately, with the current RFPs, if people don't know they're out, they have the previous ones on the brain. And I think we need to take more action to promote this. You know, I'd asked a few times back when I was on the council about, hey, why don't we just put a sign on it? Whenever I go to Seattle to visit my daughter, any property Seattle's trying to sell and redevelop, they have a sign on it that tells people it's for sale.
That's a great idea.
And there's nothing there, and there hasn't been for years.
Yeah, Gabe?
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think it goes back to construction, unless you have something subsidized. I don't see how you're gonna build on a rental property, just the math doesn't work. If you look at SDR owns project, you know, the old mall in Burlington, I mean, they're getting like $8,000 a month for penthouses, right? And these are guys that own the concrete, right? Like, these are people that own the materials to do this stuff, and I think even like the cheapest are maybe like $2,500. So, you know, possibly in conjunction with some creative financing and getting like the downstreet involved, or, you know, Habitat or something, maybe you come up with a solution. But I just don't think you're gonna, until you have something that can start where you set a price point that people can, outside developers can feel like, yeah, I can get $3,000 a month for rent, and therefore it's worth building that $500,000 apartment. Otherwise, a $500,000 apartment built by downstreet is going to go for, you know, $1,200 a month because it's subsidized, right? And that math works for them, but it doesn't work for anybody. Or who's the downstreet? I mean, right? Like, you guys can do things that other people just can't do.
Yeah, we're really lucky in that way. Yeah, I was just gonna say that we have, you know, we have our own huge barriers to entry that come along with affordable housing development. We face a lot of the same problems. But you're right, we have special access in a lot of ways, so we can access funds that other folks can't.
And one thing that's being brought up on that site is like the windows and the aesthetics of this. And I know Tim and Sandy are doing the top work of figuring out sweeping potential regulation shifts and working with the planning commission to do that. And I think aesthetics might be one of those areas to really look at. You know, I was talking to a developer who's not here right now, but he was saying that the windows in this renovation that he wanted to do in downtown, he found them at $60,000 total for the windows. But if he did it to meet the city's codes, that they would be $240,000. And that differential would just, you know, it would kill the project. And he was saying, well, I could just get the same windows and like paint them, or like similar windows and just paint them, but wasn't sure if we would be allowing that. I told him to reach out to you to talk about this, and maybe he has or hasn't, but I was like, there's got to be some way to work that issue. But I think that's something that would be good for us to look into as a committee. Yeah, Sandy, and then I'll open it up.
I looked at that and said too, besides the angle issue, I mean, at one point there was a discussion of making an intersection with Berry Street and then even connecting it with a bridge over behind Capitol Plaza. I mean, that configuration, if the, for instance, the driveway that's part of the deed next to the drawing board, if the road could be moved over there and the parking lot in the back could be reduced in size. I mean, there's all these different limitations that could make a difference when it's going forward.
Like the distinction of like recognizing it's by its nature is a challenging side, right? Like, yeah.
Right.
And are there attitudinal things or regulatory things happening at the city level that's
Right, and there's, I mean, this is probably not a place to talk about M&M site for too long, but there used to be 2 buildings on that site with parking lot for the fisherman gallery.
Yeah, behind it.
So, yeah, so, I mean.
But the road was different.
That's what we're saying, so the city in planning has kind of limited it down to. There's also discussion about combining it into the Jacobs lot, which is just, kind of sitting there like a duck ready to be caught during duck season, right? That could be built up. There's a lot of possibilities that could sweeten the deal. And suddenly give downstream enough units to make it worth their while. So, but that, I think having a specific meeting on that with developers could be really cool.
Yeah, great idea.
Back to the policy issues, but I mean, there's a lot of people have looked at that site for probably almost 20 years.
Okay, I'd love to go online if there's anyone online who is interested in getting in on this conversation. We'd be happy to hear from you. I'm going to shut.
You have to turn your volume off to hear them.
Oh, I'm not on that. So we'll do that manually, but you're saying we can't, with your computer, we can't hear anyone online? Yeah, could you log in soon? Okay, get ready to speak in just a minute. We would love to hear from you, and we'll come to you right when we can log in. Anyone else in the room? Yeah, okay.
And this might segue to Alan Goldman, because he and I had a conversation last week about this, but I don't know, I've not been in your meetings, but some of the reporting that's come out of the meetings, I just want to talk about affordability for a second. So we talk about affordability, we need all kinds of housing, right? So we're looking at projects, and like I love all the any housing up on Country Club Road would be better than homes. We're really excited, but when you look at the way low-income housing tax credit projects are funded, it's like the poorer, like the more people that are out. Like you just get scored in different ways. And what all the research shows is that communities actually do better when there's mixed incomes, right? That everybody rises, people are mixing together. And so I get a little bit concerned when we talk about affordability that we're not thinking about how do we bring, different price points. There are some projects that you guys talk about different price points, right? I mean, it's important to have different socioeconomic people sort of mixing together. And there's a great project in Burlington, Cambrian Rise. If anybody wants to take a look at it, Farrell did it up there, but he gave one lot to Cathedral Square. He gave one lot to, who's their light tech goods? Anyway,
Champlain House.
Champlain Housing Trust. And then the rest of them he built market rate. So it's like, look, we have that, but then we have just like right in the same block, we have other, we got rentals, we got condos going on. I just would encourage us as we're talking about affordability. I think, we need there's all kinds of things. We need affordable city. We need people that are paying taxes. We need a lot of things, right? So just maybe open it up to thinking about not just like 100% affordable.
And we talked about that concept when we were talking about Country Club Road. Yeah.
Subcommittee.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Okay, I'm going online now, and then I'll come over to you.
I also just throw out that I want to say almost all, I don't want to say every, but most light tech projects have mixed income on them. And most light tech projects will have market rate. So every light tech building that we do has at least like 1 or 3 market rates.
No, I just saw some of the stuff. Some of the proposals for CCR
totally
are a little different.
Okay, on over to Alan Mohan.
Oh, somebody can go before me if they like.
I don't have a lot to add. I think, the appeals process, obviously, that's, I agree with making some, efforts to streamline that process would be helpful. I think in our experience with a couple of, projects in Montpelier where we had some sort of challenges in getting the project off the ground was just having sort of clearly defined expectations from the city, particularly around what the fire department would like to see for access to a parcel, and hammerhead, whether it's hammerhead, the preference of hammerhead turnarounds versus roundabouts, or and then if we're doing a roundabout type or not a roundabout but a cul-de-sac style at the end of a street, what are the preferred dimensions for that? Clear things like that to help with the pre-design work, that would make that a little easier. Yeah, consistency is really important for us as well. We just like to know what we're getting into, and when we work in multiple municipalities and things are changing all the time, it's hard to keep up with it. We certainly appreciate doing more developer-friendly ordinances. However, consistency is also really helpful, because we can work around consistency. Where if they change a lot, that means that we're constantly shifting as well. But yeah, I don't have much to add beyond what other folks have said.
Bring me back. Can you mute them? And I am back online. Okay, great. Was there anyone else online? Alan, I saw your hand up and then down, or Doug, or Sean, if you have anything to add. And Alan, I'm seeing you go back on mute, but put your hand up if you'd like to speak, because there's no way I can communicate with you unless I have the visual cue. Okay, there you are, Alan. Cutting me off now. I'm out.
Okay. Thank you. It's sort of odd speaking to a silent picture. So I'll do my best. I see reactions, but I don't hear any comments or voice laughter or anything. I agree with much of what has been said. The interesting thing over a very long time is it's just been easier to build outside of the city. We do have some flood constraints that Berlin, Barry, East Montpelier, Waterbury don't face quite as acutely. They have more areas where they can build. Frequently, the regs are a little bit more clear. Like you were asking a suggestion earlier, one of the things I would suggest working in so many different towns, I know Tim, I know that Sandy and many other folks would probably agree. Usually when you talk about a zoning district, whether it be rural or mixed use residential or anything like that, you can certainly mention it many times in many ways, but there should be one page, almost every town does it this way, that talks about the character and then shows the dimensional standards right on that page. In our regs, you have to go through multiple spots. We have 210 pages, 220 pages, as I think Mr. Heaney mentioned, 60 some odd pages of wetland regs. So there's just a lot to navigate. We've been working hard and long at Sabins. We've had great success with the city help us polish and change the regs. I know Tim and Sandy and Mike are doing the same thing, and lots of other folks and the other young gentleman that's been trying to do the different units with Anthony Irapino representing it. So that was my first observation. Oh, I'm dinged. Something dinged me. Sorry. It's hard because I just see, it's like I'm seeing mime. So.
And I think you're good, Alan. You just keep going.
Okay, thank
you. We welcome your feedback.
Thank you, Sean, and good to hear your voice. And so, everybody really is working hard. Of course, as you know, all the towns, and that's why I was late to this meeting, everybody's going after the same grants. Plainfield, East Montpelier, we are, Barriers. But the thing I find the most has just been, it's been the Act 250, 10 units, trigger 5 miles radius. So most people have been building outside the city. I will turn into you a study that we did from 010 through 020 for every surrounding town, every housing permit that was pulled, and everyone that was actually built. And there is an interesting pattern. Again, I want to thank the Planning Commission, Mike, the council, and I certainly thank the governor and everybody else for Act 47 and 181, because now the door really is open. It has been a struggle. So since the paradigm changed in 2020, people think I'm happily keeping open, keeping Court Street empty. I am not. I couldn't trigger Act 250. I couldn't do that while I'm working on Sabins. And then we were asked to help next door with the CCR. And God forbid if I trigger it at Sabins, and once a growth application had been submitted, including us both, I would trigger it for the CCR as well. So we just had to wait. We got lucky. I think, as the other young gentleman mentioned, who's doing the housing, we submitted the growth area expansion. It has not happened. And sort of here we are. I probably should stop, and if there's more comments, I'll put them in writing and more definitive, because I'm just hoofing it. I don't have any notes. I would also again emphasize, to close it, we have many physical constraints because of the convergence of the river and who we are. And I'll just say this last piece because it's an interesting piece of data. In 1955, we had 8,000 residents and about 3,500 jobs. When I used the Patriot program and just put 1955 forward, over $300 million worth of growth has taken place, such as National Life in 1970, Vermont Mutual did their building, Chittenden Bank, Tim Heaney and his family, I think, did 2 great projects, Freedom Drive and Independence Green, Murray Hill, Stonewall Meadows, all the mansard buildings that are owned by Tim Ayer or the Leahy Press, Stonecutters Way, all the things that you see. But the amazing thing is, after 70 years, we grew to almost 19,000 jobs, but we still had 8,000 residents. And you have to ask yourself, why? We didn't do it by design. We want to grow. It's so important. And Gabe mentioned one of the very serious difficulties we face. When Down Street is building, and they're doing the best they can to create housing, and that's their primary goal, and they've been wonderful at doing it. But frequently they're coming in at over $500 a square foot. So as Gabe mentioned, 1,000 square foot would literally be 500 grand. I know that the French Bach came in for over 500 a square foot. I know that the Model Center came in at over 500 a square foot. So we can't charge those kinds of rents and provide worker housing or affordable housing or anything of the kind. And so, these are some of the challenges that I see. The flood, unfortunately, really gave us a terrible lesson in 23 of how vulnerable we truly are. So now we've lost a lot of the downstairs, the hotel, Mr. Heaney's building, the post office. We have to bring all our utilities upstairs. I was just lucky. It wasn't by design. I was just lucky when I bought 7 Court Street. It's just out of that floodplain. So that's what I've noticed over the years. I appreciate that everybody's trying. We're seeing tremendous progress at CCR. I know that they're working very hard at Stonewall Meadows. I would also echo what somebody else said earlier. When you create regs, I would follow the state standards. The example being, we're setting a 25-year flood event when the state says 100. We're writing a 500-foot setback for a vernal pool, which is a class 2 wetland structure, when the state says 50. I would follow their regs. That's my general opinion, because if it goes to appeal, those are the standards that are going to be applied. I would also not try to reinvent a lot of what the state has already done. One of the great things that a city has that I don't have, that Gabe doesn't have, and the other young man that's building, or Sandy and Tim, unless we give them the grace through relieving them of the permit fees and Act 250 not going through it. A municipality does not have to pay Act 250 fees, but you do get all the benefit of their wisdom. Myself, Tim Heaney, others, Sandy, Gabe, when we go forward, we have to pay the fees. They're huge. So even Sabins, we've designed it for Act 250 standards, but we're trying our best to navigate the paths. As Sandy mentioned, I want to be a permitted use. I want to be a P. I don't want to be a C. I don't want to be a conditional use where you face so many challenges like the other young gentleman who's trying to do the single, the duplex, and the quadplex. So that would be my observation. The regs are long, they're hard. You have to read Title IX, Chapter 137 if you're going to be a landlord. You have to read Title 24, Chapter 117, as we all know. You'll have to read some Title 10, Act 47, 181, and then maybe you'll be ready like a Mr. Heaney or an architect Fitzhume or Mr. Gabe. Otherwise, it's really hard to navigate these waters. It takes a fortune of money. And so those are my observations. So over my many, many, many years of being here, and I came here in around 70, we've watched Stonewall Meadows get built, Murray Hill, Freedom Drive, Independence Green. The Connors brothers have done a few projects, some other projects up by Toy Town. I tried to do a for-profit event, but it was so overconditioned, we couldn't make the numbers work. We just had to stop. And since that time, as it says in one of our master plans, Murray Hill, one of our more recent developments, actually, that's 1986. So sadly, the for-profit groups have stopped. We all had to wait for assistance. Even Gabe and his group, who are extremely talented people, need CHIP, TIF assistance or grant assistance. In the old days, Ken Senecal built Murray Hill with his own money on the road. I'm assuming, Mr. Heaney, you probably had to do the same for Freedom Drive and Independence Green. The projects get taken over later, but it was done with private funds. So I'm watching all these new paradigms. How do we navigate these waters? And so that probably sounded negative, so I want to close it on the positive, which is, again, I have never seen so many open doors and windows by our community and the state to really provide quality housing. And I don't like the word landlord. I'm a housing provider. I don't lord over anything. And so again, I want to really thank the planning department, Mr. Miller and his staff, the city council for broadening all of these thresholds to do things in like GB1 or Riverfront. Thank you for going after tier 1 and tier 1, tier 1A and tier 1B. And we really have a chance. For the first time in a very long time, the for-profit group has a good chance to maybe do something for you. Thank you. I've spoken a long time. Again, this is not written. This is just off the cuff. So thank you so much for your time.
Back on. Thank you so much, Alan. This is like a fireside chat over here. We're with you. Appreciate your perspective. It is awkward that we can't, interact. And so I know you were looking at only your name on a block that was like large on your screen, it sounded like, but we could hear you loud and clear. Thank you for your perspective. And in the 10, 12 minutes we have left, would love to just hear from anyone else who hasn't spoken yet.
I really appreciate everything that you've shared. It's been really insightful and inspiring. ways. Though tragic.
Yeah, it's tragic. Yeah. This is good. This is like our joint like catharsis, and then we can get to like problem solving. Did you hear all those problem solving strategies we got here? I mean, Tim and Dan are gonna figure out the regs.
So
Did you have anything?
yes, I do.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share, I think we talk a lot, and we have talked a lot about the appeals process, and I just maybe want to share like from someone who's just been through the thick of it and just had a project delayed about a year because of it and incurred about $20,000 in legal fees to go through that process. I think most folks, and again, to Dave's point, like if we didn't have access to that kind of funding, we would have walked away from it most likely, with all of the unknowns of how long that would take, if we would make it through it, how much it was going to cost. We have the resources to do that, and so we're really lucky to be able to push through that. And it was an interesting learning experience. And I think the big takeaway that I have from that is that it's not just like the appeal that is cumbersome and affects that. It's like
Hi, Ellen.
and how other people develop based on
Fantastic.
going ahead. I think there's a lot. There are a lot of folks who probably won't touch anything because of that experience, and just knowing that that's possible. And it's one of a number of appeals periods. Like again, to Gabe's point, we have a lot of other hurdles to jump through. We have federal funding on our project, and so we have to make it through an ER. So like that's another opportunity that the public has to appeal our projects on something that could be entirely useless, but could come up as a tactic to defer our timeline or extend our budget, and potentially throw us off track. And so much of that is really just based in NIMBYism. And so, it's always like we can do so much with policy, and that is the sort of lurking monster behind so many things, is that people can champion these projects to their neighbors and to city council and to the public, and then when it comes down to it, they have the opportunity to throw it to these folks because they don't want it next door to them, or they don't want it in the neighborhood. So yeah, I would say appeals process is like a huge thing. And also like want to take off my Down Street hat and put on my I appreciate also that Doug used who was that speaking? Alan. Yeah, that Alan used the term housing provider, because I hate to refer to myself as a landlord. But I am a housing provider outside of my role at Down Street. And I think our city relies a lot on folks like my wife and I, who have a second home or live in a duplex or live in a triplex and rent those other units to provide, reasonable housing for folks in the city. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to do that. Operating costs are going through the roof, and our property taxes over the last 2 years have more than doubled on 2 duplexes that we own and operate. And unfortunately causes us to raise rents, and that's our only real option. And so we've gone from running units that were below market to now running they're above market rate, and we're not in a financial position to be able to take advantage of many of the incentives that are available, like BHIP or other major things that I've mentioned through my work. We're not in a position to be able to harness those funds. So there's really nothing at this point keeping small Montpelier landlords operating those properties, and I think that's where we're getting a lot of short-term rentals coming in. I know that's like, I also run an Airbnb out of my house out of an empty unit. We don't take any long-term housing off the market to do that, but it's like a thing that we have to do to be able to continue to operate our long-term rentals. So yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said, potential incentives for small landlords to continue to operate affordably. I'd say that small A affordably, not big A. And yeah, I think that there's a lot that the city could be doing to first that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, Tim Sinnott, Planning Commission, and thank you all so much for speaking tonight. There's a lot of great information. I just want to say very briefly, we're at a point now in our process of the regulations review. We've gone through all the chapters, like was super helpful in that approach, and we're transitioning now to actually digging in and making changes. The vast majority of us are, well, we're all pro-housing. The vast majority of us are not developers. So to be able to come to us with very specific ideas about what could change and why, we'll take as much as you can send our way. We'll bring all that into consideration. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. I think from my perspective is how can we make these regulations much more permissive? A lot of it comes down to numbers that are in the regulations. You know, setbacks, building heights, these are regulations that we can make recommendations for change. And then that will go up to the council for approval. But we are open to all the ideas that y'all have to bring. And it's been incredibly helpful so far. The pieces that James had mentioned earlier, sort of the low-hanging fruit pieces that we worked on over the summer, sent through the planning department over to city council, all got approved. That was great. And we want to do that on a much larger scale for all.
Thank you. Doug, I know you wanted to speak. It's going to be awkward, Doug, because we have about 5 minutes left. So in 3 minutes, I'm going to hop in and cut you off, unfortunately. But please speak.
Yes, thank you. You've heard many very appropriate comments this evening, and I beg you to pursue them, please. Thank you.
Well, that was quick and to the point. Thank you, Doug. You know what, I can tell you, before I move to kind of synthesizing what just happened here, anyone else? Yeah, and anyone who hasn't spoken yet that would like to win?
I can just briefly say that I'm not a developer. I'm relatively new to these meetings, but I'm really excited about like the development, particularly at CCR and the other stuff that I've heard here. And to your point about like NIMBYism and appealing to your neighbor, like I'm trying to bring energy to like a NIMBY counterbalance among the community. I've been posting on Front Porch Forum and the Facebook group and showing up to as many CCR meetings as I can make. And if folks have suggestions or want to join me in that effort, I know I'm really appreciative of it.
Come to our meetings, you can join one of our subcommittees.
Just want to express that like I'm out there trying to organize and cheerlead.
Thank you.
Shane showed up at one of the TRB meetings. I've never seen it before, and I nearly hugged him. Like it's amazing. Somebody saying support, and it made a big difference in tone.
It's great. Thank you. Over to Gabe.
That's all I was going to say. I've seen people from this committee and other people that are interested starting to show up at city council meetings, and you know, like it's just so important because you're going to have, when we go through these planning, you know, zoning reform, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to show up and say, don't change all those things. If you care, you got to show up so that we can hear the other side of it. And the city council, everywhere, wherever we can get out that YIMBY message is like, that's what we need is pro housing people.
You know, just for what, just real quick, like
And Sandy had her.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't want to do this. I'll be really. I think that's great that you're doing that, and you know, I'm just thinking about like other communities around us, particularly like Burlington. A year ago, Building Better Burlington group created, like it was related to public safety. There was this idea that you could sign up as a community member to like a pledge, like we support these specific policy issues. And I just think, like, I wonder if there isn't some opportunity like that or something in Montpelier, like a YIMBY pledge or something like that. People in the community that are pro-housing that really want to see these policies forward. They just kind of set up because it's like policy follows culture, right? And I think it works.
Thank you. Zach, did you have anything, because you haven't spoken yet, that you wanted to offer?
I don't really. I mean, I right before Stephen spoke, I was going to try to shift the conversation a little bit more towards, you know, the policy proof, I think it's very easy to go out and pick those things. We know we have a lot of work to cover there. One thing that I've really witnessed over the last couple of years of trying to move housing forward is on the public support side, really trying to generate more enthusiasm. And I just feel like I've had so many conversations with folks where I think most people categorically say, oh yeah, I support housing. Then when we get into the trenches of a DRB meeting or some other aspect of the planning process, it's a I support but scenario. And I really want to try to be able to temper that. You know, there's a lot of hyperbolic conversation about housing crisis right now. But it's probably not that hyperbolic. I do think we're, you know, Alan pointed out sort of the stagnant growth that we've had. We're decades behind. Councillor Doyle just went through a really challenging budget cycle. We're going to be right back there again next year because we haven't grown the grand list meaningfully. And I think that if the community could more directly associate all of the benefits of more housing and more people and population here, also with the tax implications and what that means for services, whether it's fire or roads or sewer and all these things that we're suffering with currently, maybe more people would be like, okay, I'm going to drop the button, just full stop, I support housing, let's go. Because, you know, if we're only building 8 or 10 units per year and the goal is 75, we're never going to get there. We're moving backwards big time.
Yeah. Sandy, I'm gonna wrap us, but you want to do 30 seconds?
Yeah, super quick, especially from my experience in Plainfield last year. I think people are their most generous when you talk about town-wide rules. They can see the bigger picture. It's when you get to a specific development, as was just said, that all the people begin, it's just human nature to look at all the reasons why they can oppose it. And I think that making things appeal, I don't want to say appeal proof, but limiting ability to appeal at a town level, people will be more generous. And then that helps later on.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I know probably some folks want to continue to speak, and I'm sorry that I'm going to wind us down. I said we would be here till 8:30. We're a little over that slightly, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the conversation. And I'm happy to talk more beyond this. So, you know, Alan, I reached out to you directly, left you a voicemail, happy to talk with you. I'll follow up by email because I see your hand. And anyone else there, happy to do it. So thanks everyone. And I will release you to your evening because I know the committee members have been here a lot longer than this. So thanks so much, everyone.
I just wanted to thank the group.
Anyway.